What's up, guys? Welcome to Nutmegged, the podcast where a Yank and a Brit talk about the beautiful game from across the pond. Of course, it is me, Faisal, representing the UK, and I've got Andrew with me representing the Stars and Stripes. How are you today, bud?
Yo, life is good. MLS playoffs has started, which I don't care about. So, yep, we're good.
Of course, if you're new to the show, you'll know how Andrew feels about the American football in general and also the leagues in particular. So go back, listen up, get clued up, because we'll hear more of that. We have a jam-packed show today. We'll go into a bit more about the current news. We'll look into a bit more about the betting scandal at the moment. So we'll talk a little. Andrew, a little breakdown for you on that. We'll also have some sort of live news. We'll do a little report back from the current Ballon d'Or award ceremony that's happening at the moment. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. And also we have to talk about one player as well as other players, which we'll discuss, which is going to be obviously Jude Bellingham. So that's going to be a player that I suppose every podcast you listen to as a sports fan and a football fan, you will have heard his name pretty often. So, and yes, we're going to have to talk about it. So, but let's get stuck in with some of the most current news, because most recently we've had obviously a betting scandal in the world. Football has hit. So, Andrew, you want to break us down in terms of what we're looking at the moment? What's the latest?
I would be happy to do so, but it is an unfortunate time because we're starting to see this happen more and more often, which is unfortunate. So we've already seen that in the Premier League with Ivan Toney getting banned. I think it was for 8 months, which is quite unfortunate because his career was really starting to kick off and doing well for Brentford. He is yet to return because he is serving that 8-month ban. Now there is a new scandal, which I don't know why we're really calling it a scandal per se. I think like scandal should be reserved for like something really sketchy and bad that happens, which betting technically is against the law or the code of conduct or the standards based on specific leagues. Each league kind of has their own different description of how you can and cannot bet, which most of it is cannot bet. So this one is specific to Italians, but then it kind of bleeds over into other leagues. So we will dive into this. So it does get pretty deep. So I'll give you kind of the high level things of the noteworthy players that were involved in this scandal, quote unquote, and what penalties they will be playing. And this is still kind of playing out as it goes as well. So there are other potential players that are involved that are still going to go into questioning about their involvement, but haven't had that questioning happen yet. So we will see how it continues to play out. So be paying attention to what that looks like in the recent headlines. However, our first player to talk about, who is an Italian, and all these players that we are going to be talking about are of Italian heritage, and a lot of big names as well that play a part in the Italian national team. So Tonali, he is our first player. He plays for Newcastle, a recent signing as of this last year, and has been performing well. He scored for Newcastle United in their opener. Not opener specifically, but in his opener for his Newcastle debut, scoring in that. So really making a presence, kind of an attacking-ish midfielder player, and did look solid in his life opening up into Newcastle, and a key part of that team. Even Eddie Howe, the manager there, talking about how he is a key player. So he has been suspended for 10 months. That is a long ban. If you'll notice, it is more than the 8-month ban that I mentioned for Ivan Toney as well. So he is going to miss the rest of his club season for Newcastle, but as well as the Euro 2024 should Italy qualify. So he's going to be missing out on a lot of important football. Also involved in this scandal is Nicolo Fagioli. So he is Juventus's midfielder, and he is only 22 years old. He's being investigated by prosecutors in Turin for using an illegal betting platform to gamble on football matches. And like I said, this is still being played out. So a lot of this stuff is still breaking news. You're going to be seeing new things happening every day as this investigation continues to unfold. Another player, another Italian in question is Nicolo Zaniolo. I can never say his name. There's just so many O's in there, but I do like him. He is another awesome Italian player. He is being questioned by Italian authorities being involved in this whole gambling betting scheme. So Fagioli, first, he said that he has been suffering from a gambling addiction for about a year and that he had debts of about 3 million euros. So that is a lot of money to be in debt based on gambling. But he said he never gambled on Juventus games. So he was the Juventus player and he was banned for 7 months. So 7 months less than Ivan Toney's and then also less than Tonali's. So the reasoning for that, as what people have said, is because he didn't bet on himself, which for some reason usually includes a harsher fine and type of punishment. But since he did not bet on himself, he also came forward and said, hey, I am doing this. I did it illegally. I know it was bad. I have an addiction. I need some help with that. So that's why people are saying he got a little bit less of a ban from playing football. So it is big of him to come forward to say all of that. And he is the kind of first one that was a part of this to come out and say that he has an issue and that he really was a part of it actually doing that. Now back to Tonali, the Newcastle midfielder. He then came and said that he admitted to betting on Milan. And I don't even know how to say this team, but it's his team before he played for Milan, Brescia, an Italian team. Yep. So he gambled on both of those two teams while he was playing at those clubs. So that is why he had stiffer sanctions brought to him as opposed to some of the other players that we mentioned before. And he also has said that he is struggling with a gambling addiction. Now, so those were the two players we mentioned that have come out, said, hey, yes, I have an addiction. I was doing this. Their bans have been placed. Zaniolo is the one player who has said he has not done any illegal gambling. So he still has to go in for some questioning. That is to be determined, but he is still holding firm and said he's never done anything illegal in terms of gambling. Now, getting into a little bit more of the minutia of this story, Italian football commentator David Farini, he has said, this is a quote specifically, betting by professional athletes is ruining sport, affecting the outcomes of matches. Seeing as though the reward for betting is financial, the punishment should also be financial. Now, I'm going to flip a question over to you in a second. I'll drop a few more details, but I want you to think about this. And this is kind of a good thing for listeners as well to kind of question. Do you agree that betting and gambling is ruining the sport of football? Personally, I don't think it is. We can dive into this a little bit. I'll toss this question over to you as well. And then I come from the American perspective where gambling in sport has always kind of been a thing. It's gotten even more intense recently. Ohio, specifically the state where I live, just passed this thing where you can do all this kinds of crazy sports betting now. And then we had the history with Pete Rose, like fixing games. So he was a baseball player and then he was banned for life from the sport because of the gambling and things that he was doing on it. And then there were the White Sox issues as well in like the 1990 or 1919s. So early on in baseball gambling, there were fixing games issues because people were betting on games, stuff like that. So I come with that perspective. So I'm curious to hear what your perspective is as well. And listeners too, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Drop us a DM on our Instagram account and we can continue this conversation. But let me drop you a few more nuggets and then let's kind of dive into what this discussion will look like. Many high-profile footballers have also spoken out about the deep gambling culture in football. We know it's there as well. As fans, you see plastered everywhere in advertisements, different gambling companies, whether that's on front of players' jerseys, team kits. You can have them on the sleeves. You see them on the boards that kind of go around the field, the pitch as well. So it's really kind of ingrained in football in general. With that being said, organizations such as the Professional Footballers Association have said that they have seen an increase lately of players seeking help with gambling that either are kind of on the bridge of addiction or that are addicted in general to gambling, so that they have reached out and need help for that. Last season, 8 out of the 20 Premier League teams had betting companies as front shirt sponsors, and that was worth a collective £60 million. So 8 specifically teams had front and center branded kits with betting companies on the front. So while the Premier League has announced that the front of shirt betting sponsorship is going to end by the 2026-2027 season, it's arguable whether that move will even change much because clubs could still feature that betting teams on sleeves, on training tops, and other places as well. So now let's kind of dive into this discussion. Do you think this will ever change? Personally, I don't think it will, because money, we've all learned that in the world of football, money kind of is the root cause of a lot of bad stuff, but it never changes because people and teams want to keep that. And then is it even bad to gamble on sport as an athlete? So let me throw that to you, and I'd love to get your thoughts on all of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I appreciate that sort of background for our listeners, especially as well. So it's been great, and I'm fan of your Italian pronunciations there, man. Yeah, nice work. So there's a couple of things as I was speaking. First, my initial thought was it's actually quite sad that more and more footballers are coming out and saying that they have a problem with addiction. That it is becoming more and more prevalent. I think that is part of the problem with the sport at the moment. That there is more and more high profile, especially footballers, coming to the front and saying, "Look, I have a problem. I need support," and reaching out to those kind of organisations, to their clubs, to do that. And I think that also stems from potentially the pressures of being a footballer and having those people around you, your team potentially around you, going, "Look, you can actually influence a game." And perhaps there are now more and more sort of your members of your team, for example, sort of fans, and essentially putting more and more effort in going to those games, spending these money in these games, and perhaps players feeling they need to almost like balance that a little bit as well. So I think it is sad, and I think there is going to be. I personally think it is a problem, and I think you can sort of challenge me in that as well. But I feel like the fact that it is front and center for 8 clubs, you said, it just is. For people, for example, who have an addiction, who see it plastered day in, day out on their favorite team, for example, it almost instills in that area. Like we don't necessarily have, and it'd be good for example, for us to have someone who has suffered with addiction, for example, and talk us through the whole idea about it. But it feels almost like, say, for example, you can't have a certain food product, for example, a certain drink, you're just seeing it everywhere. It must be getting into yourself, and you feel almost obliged to, and it must be like almost like it's just almost like punishing to watch, for example, Betway, and you've lost thousands of pounds, for example, on that. So that can be really hard. But I think there is also a bit of a culture around, say, in the Premier League and also football in general, especially in the world we are in the moment in terms of English football as well, where it's a Saturday, you put on like an ACCA, which is an accumulator of sorts, right? Where you bet on a series of results, like a string of results, for example, like say 5 or 6 results over many couple of leagues. And it's a good chunk of money you could potentially, when you put like £1 on, for example, and if each of these maybe 6 string of results come through, you are making into the hundreds. So there's that kind of background potentially as well.
From a British perspective, what do you call that? Is there like a specific term that you use for like those different things?
Yeah, we call them accumulators or ACCAs, ACCA.
We call those parlays here in the US.
Parlays?
Yeah, don't know why.
That does.
Yeah, don't know why, but yeah, I was just curious if there was like a British thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, parlays over here.
Yeah, it's ACCAs here. So I mean, as you spoke about, you know about it as well, and I think that's the thing in world football. Is always, for example, on Saturday, people tend to do that, and it's almost like a part of the game now, for example. So, but I also think like it is, and I think the reason it's hitting a lot more the fact that footballers are now making those impact. It feels like almost you can bet on the game, but football's all I personally thought growing up anyway. It seemed like quite pure in terms of sense like. We've not had any of these kind of, these scandals that have come out where certain, like you know, for example, you've let in a goal, you've put a red card in, for example. It feels like it's always been untouched. There's been 2 clubs at it, scoring goals or defending, whatever it is. So I think that's potentially as well that the integrity of the Premier League and also football, English football in general, when it's being sort of like, there's a question mark about the integrity, that's when it's a bit more intense. And that's why people are obviously coming to the forefront and saying they do have issues, but also saying that it is ruining the beautiful game. So, really tough one. Just before I throw it back to you for a sec, on the Tonali at 10 months, something I read earlier as well is that he is able to train with the squad, and he can also do friendly games, but he cannot actually play in the games. And I think that's an interesting and important element as well. It means that if you're a Newcastle fan, you're a member of a club, for example, the committee or the board, for example, that has spent millions of pounds on Tonali to come into the club, seeing that he can still at least keep fit. He can play friendly games, for example, perhaps train with the under-18s, for example, and he's not continuing rotting away at home, for example. He can still train and still. So I think that is important to kind of distinct as well, which means that it's not even a lighter sentence, but it means that he can still be around the club and into that area. And the final thing I'll just say on that, and I want to throw potentially back to you as well, is do you think that Tonali arguably was one of the best sort of centre attacking midfielders? He was, doing flying in I think it was AC Milan, the captain, doing particularly well. There's been potential kind of conspiracy about the fact they kind of shipped him off to Newcastle in fairly quick succession. Did they know? Did they know this was going to happen, and did they kind of preempt it and go, right, let's just put him into another club, put him away from this atmosphere of Italian football and get him somewhere else? Is that potential as well? So yeah, throw it back to you.
I know this is such a deep subject to break down because there are so many different elements that go into it. First, let me talk about how sucky it is for organizations like leagues to be able, and just to do it in general, to make the choice actively, to let betting organizations be all around the game when your players in your league, there are definitely some of them that struggle with addiction. Not only that, but then you say it's wrong from a league perspective to even bet. Then why on earth would you just allow that to happen? Because I think the analogy is this is essentially footballers playing for a team that has a lot of betting sponsorship around it is like a alcoholic working at a bar.
Exactly.
Like you're just around it 24/7. Like that's just crazy. Like why would you as a league let your players suffer and struggle that way? So I think leagues in general need to do better, and clubs as well need to do better, because if you're accepting that money for a betting sponsorship to be on the front of your jersey, think about your players, man. Come on. That's just sick. Like as a club owner, like with Delaware Rising, like I would never even think of doing something that would put pressure on my players in that manner. Like that's just wrong. So that needs to be taken care of and better for player safety and health, because I know we've talked about player mental health before. This just fits right into that. Clubs need to be doing better. We say that all the time, and hopefully they'll listen to this at some point and do it. Now, the next kind of topic on that, your specific question that you asked me, maybe Milan did know that it was going to happen and send him out. With that being said, he went for 70 million. How do you say no to that? I don't know if he's worth that. Maybe he is. I think that is a little bit overinflated. I do think the Premier League also, by nature, inflates prices. So, if you're an outside league, you're going to get higher money from the Premier League teams because Premier League teams will pay a higher amount of money for a specific type of player. So I think maybe you can't turn that down. So I don't know if that was part of the reasoning or not, if it comes to that. I think the deeper thing is, for me, is this even bad? Is it even bad as an athlete to gamble? When it comes to an addiction, of course, once it becomes a problem, you absolutely need to get help. The right resources need to be around you. Your club should be supporting you, which unfortunately, they're not there for the prevention side, but it sounds like they're there after you've had this negative experience. So at least that's one good part of this, because I saw the reports about, like you had talked about, Newcastle, he's still able to train, which is good. The league allows that, which makes sense, because he's struggling with an addiction. You don't just want to shove him out into no man's land and to just struggle by himself. So Eddie Howe had came in and said, hey, we're here to support him. We're going to make sure he gets the help that he needs, all that kind of stuff. So that's good to see. So I'm glad that's a part of it. However, if it's more just the friendly side of gambling, and clearly gambling is a part of sports in general around the world, is it really bad for athletes to gamble on sporting events? I think it breaks down into two categories. So if you think about it from a business perspective, which I always seem to do, insider trading is illegal. So that's essentially if you're inside an organization and you're at a publicly traded company. So let's say you work for IBM. IBM is publicly traded. So if you know that let's say the COO, you know that the CEO had some type of scandal and he's going to either forcibly resign or he's going to get kicked out. And you know that that's going to negatively impact the stock price. So then you're going to preemptively say, all right, I know that this dude's going to get fired. It's not public knowledge, but I'm going to sell my shares before the stock market value tanks. That is insider trading. That is illegal. So I would say if you flip that back, which sporting organizations are the same, they occupy the professional world. They're professional organizations. They pay taxes, do the same types of things as businesses would do. They operate as a business, and they are businesses. So why would you not have that type of structure there of saying any type of insider trading is illegal? If you, as a player, you can't, I wouldn't say you would bet on yourself. I think that would be kind of cool. Like, yo, I'm so good. I know I'm going to bet on myself. Like, that gives me extra motivation. I get that's kind of cool. But then if you bet against yourself, then you start saying, like, okay, is there some type of deeper thing going on? Like an actual scandal? I don't think this Italian thing was a scandal. A scandal would be fixing matches. Like, that would be a scandal. And then if you bet against yourself, then you kind of realize, okay, then there's probably a scandal there. So I get why you should never bet on yourself. Let's take that off the table. That shouldn't happen. It gets too convoluted, too confusing. Then you start saying, okay, on your own organization, if you would bet on your own organization, yes or no, then you would say, okay, I probably have some type of insider information that the general public doesn't have that they can't use for their betting types of things that they're trying to do. So then that would be insider information. So then you shouldn't be able to bet on a team that you're a part of. I would say that makes sense. So get that one off the table as well. Maybe league stuff as well. So I know that these players interact with each other quite often. You're saying you're playing in the same league, so you're interacting quite often. So maybe that's considered insider information as well. That one is a little bit more of a gray area. If you would be able to have that type of information that the public wouldn't be able to have, that other clubs would share with you, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. Let's just take it off the table for now, saying that's something you can't do. But then if you're playing in the Premier League, to have enough knowledge of some other league, like Serie A as an example, would you really have some type of insider information that should prohibit you from betting on that league? I would say that's probably not going to be the case. And I would think that you should be able to then gamble on things that aren't impacting you directly and individually, because like it is part of the sport. You talked about it. It's just part of the culture. It's a part of American culture and history too. Betting on sports with your friends, it's fun. And a lot of footballers will have other friends that love football that just aren't players and that they are betting and doing gambling on the sport as well. So if you want to be able to be a part of that, I don't see a problem with it if it's outside of like the insider information circle, because I think then you can just enjoy it and you don't really have to worry about it like being considered a scandal, because then you're talking about match fixing and things like that. What is your thought on like gambling in general in the sport?
I mean, as you're sort of speaking, it made. I can see what you're going with, and I can see where you're kind of going for. I think a lot of people would argue, and perhaps addicts would argue potentially as well. I think they argue, well, that's where it begins. So what they're essentially saying is, yeah, potentially I'm playing the Premier League, for example, I'm betting on a team in AC Milan, for example, Juventus, for example, like that. I know a little bit about it, and it gets me started. And say I win a couple of games, I'm winning, winning money, for example. And then they're saying that potentially may breed within yourself, and you kind of go, well, I kind of know what I'm kind of doing here. Potentially, I can perhaps do some more stuff here, and I can perhaps play in the Premier League and do a bit more kind of impact. So what they're potentially saying is that might link back into the Premier League. But I also think I think we kind of, I need to identify potentially what we're referring to betting in particular is what we're betting on in particular. So it depends on the outcome of it, right? So there was a very famous thing that was, it's the lower leagues FA Cup game. I think we've discussed in a previous one as well. I think, what you call it? There's a very famous betting company. I forgot the name of it. Paddy Power. That's it, right? They put on I forgot what it's called, where you put on like an odd, essentially. They put odds, for example, for a member of the coaching team to eat a pie on the sidelines, right? Now, I remember you might have heard about this. So I remember that being one of the things, for example, and that obviously the odds at the beginning of it were very low because they're thinking that's never going to happen. So obviously people have now betted. He knows people are kind of going around and going cool, and then you see him. There's a clip of him just eating a pie on the sidelines, and then that kind of goes up. And this is the case there. So it's little things like that. For example, say you're betting on the odds of a whole game. Say, for example, it's your own club. You're going to win 2-1, for example. You're like, cool, that's fine. But if, for example, you're betting on getting a red card, then I think the integrity of the game gets lost a little bit. Because then you're not betting on the outcome. You are literally going out of your way. You're betting yourself to get a red card. You know the odds are going to be low. For example, say you've not had a yellow card or a red card in like 10 games. It's very low. People all of a sudden start putting that in. You purposely create a red card that then affects, for example, you can't then play for 2 games. And then say, for example, then your club, you lose some games because you're not playing. Then it just becomes that you're actually having the issues. But I also would argue that you are still too close, in my opinion, because you know Serie A players, right? I might have had conversations with them, for example, or I've chatted, for example, and I've kind of had that. It's in that same area, in that same industry, I feel. So I still think it's a bit close. I think that's where it begins, and I think it will potentially go worse. Personally, I feel like as a footballer, you should not be looking at earning money from these sorts of things. Create businesses, for example, invest in yourself and think about other opportunities you can do. Feels like an area that you shouldn't really be getting yourself involved with as a footballer. I feel like you should be focusing on mainly, but also as you should be setting an example personally to almost be like, I'm talking on the pitch. I don't care about the outcomes of any of the games. I focus on my game, focus on scoring goals or defending or wherever your position is. And then you don't get stuck in this whole thing. I would argue that perhaps Tonali and the rest of the players you mentioned, they also thought, I'll just have a punt. It'll be one game. It's fine. I'll just try it out and see what happens. Got some good money off it. More and more new platform opens, and then it starts spiraling, and that's when they kind of caught up into it. So it is sad. I feel quite strongly about footballers specifically betting on any kind of outcomes within their own league. It just doesn't make sense for me, or even in other areas. But
I agree. I would agree. Like the three things that I said, like take off the table, like betting on yourself individually. Yep, that's too sketchy. Betting on your own team. Yep, your own results doesn't make sense. That can lead to bad things. And then even within the same league, like, yeah, I can see the gray area. So get that off the table. However, I think it's a cop out for people and organizations to say, oh, if you're going to be betting on other stuff that we allow, that's going to lead to worse stuff. I don't think that's the case. I think the case is, okay, you're just saying that because you want that to be the rule in place so that we don't have to worry about providing prevention services to make sure that our players are taken care of. Because if you're in the business world, you can trade stocks. You just can't trade stocks that you know insider information on. So I would say that's the same for football. Like, you love the sport. It's your life. You've been like fully raised on football. You're now a professional player. Like, that's literally what you do for like all of your whole life, your time, existence. Your friends do it too. And then your friends are betting. So I think it's more of an entertainment factor. So if you really want to just enjoy time with friends and bet on it, because it makes more games exciting. Like if you're betting on lower league soccer here in the US, like that makes it more exciting. I totally understand that. I will say, like, once you start gambling and then you are relying on it as like an income source, that's probably where the red lights should start flashing a little bit. Like maybe that's starting to get a little bit too intense, and that might lead or actually be a gambling addiction. And I would love to talk to someone that has gone through this. I think it would be so interesting to like get their take on where that like threshold would be, because I am more of the type of saying I would not want this overarching type of organization to tell me what I can and cannot do, even if it's like not affecting anything else at all. And I mean, maybe that's like the American revolutionary in me talking, just want to having that libertarian vibe. But I just don't think that it really is such a big problem if you're gambling on other things for entertainment and it's not an addiction and you just want to do it with your friends, as opposed to having such harsh punishments coming from the leagues and the clubs just because you're gambling on other types of organizations, other types of clubs that are not even related. You have no information on. It's just going to be for fun. I think there needs to be more clarification when it comes down to it, like what you can and cannot do, so that players are more aware, especially if leagues are going to continue to take money from betting organizations. Like there just has to be some type of happy medium where there's going to be more communication on what is and what is not allowed. But I don't think that's going to happen. Like I kind of talked about it in the very opening, money is ultimately going to dictate where this conversation goes and what changes do or don't happen. So I really don't think too much will change. The last thing I'll mention on this is what I hope to see change is that clubs will take this more seriously and offer prevention services for people that have addictions. And that's for anything as well. So you can be addicted to gambling, of course. We know alcohol is a common thing that's talked about with addiction, but there are other things as well. So if clubs will at least take this as like, hey, we see that this addiction thing is a problem, let's set up some type of prevention services, some mental health awareness, so that we can catch the triggers when we see them happening, so that we can support you and make sure that it doesn't get to the point where you need to be punished by a league. I challenge clubs to do better. Leagues should also do better. So that's really what we should all be taking away from this topic.
Couldn't agree more. 100%. I think more needs to be done. I totally agree. I think it'd be great to have someone on the pod talking about this and understanding the sort of motivations behind it. We've talked a lot about this. This has been great, and I'm sure we'll speak about it more as well, just to kind of as more and more news comes out. Like you said, it's live, it's living, it's a particular current affair that we're going to keep on top of as well. So we'll keep you guys informed. Obviously, at the moment, we'll get into the Ballon d'Ors that are on this evening in a second. Before we take on the likes of, say, Messi and when legends are currently at the moment and how good they are at the moment, I just want to take us back to thinking about times when legends are born and thinking a bit more about the debuts. Looking back at some great players, some world-class players that perhaps are now retired or still in play at the moment, and looking back at some of their amazing kind of debut goals and also debut performances. So I'm going to start off with a couple. We'll get to your thoughts, and if you've got a couple as well that you remember, want to bring up into the forefront. I'll start with one of my favorite players. I've said on the previous podcast already that Wayne Rooney is one of my all-time favorite Manchester United players. Growing up, he, for me, was just iconic. Anytime I was going to strike a ball, it'd just be Rooney. Just seeing him carry some of the best Manchester United, his link up with Cristiano Ronaldo, just that whole era of that kind of. And they don't make players like him anymore in terms of that aggressive, that kind of put it on the line, playing for the badge. Let's not get into how little of that we have in current Manchester United squad. But Wayne Rooney, for me, is always up there. So first one has got to be, for me, Wayne Rooney bagging a hat-trick. Amazing. 18 years old, fresh from Everton, debut game hat-trick. Against Newcastle. I think it's an amazing, great, and that for me is my favourite and all-time kind of debut kind of area. And then going from Red Manchester, going through to current Man City at the moment, we know how prolific Erling Haaland is. We know just how good of a footballer he is at the moment. But we know, obviously, Dortmund was where he was really brought into play and where the world really took notice. So for the next one, I'm going to say my top two is going to be Erling Haaland. Dortmund it's got to be his 23-minute hat trick here, and I think that has been the real top. You can just see in terms of the way in which the goals are scored. You can see he's aggressive in play, and he is letting the world know in a squad which is stacked. It's got Jadon Sancho in, it's got Jude Bellingham in. It's got players that it basically announced him in terms of, you give me support, I'll give you goals. And I think that's incredible for those two areas. So I'm going to start off with just Wayne Rooney debut hat-trick, and also I'm going to go for Erling Haaland debut hat-trick, 23 minutes specifically, by the way. Over to you. What you got?
Yeah, I, of course, am a fan of Rooney's because playing for our boys in red, we love to see it. But I'm surprised that there's one you didn't mention, Marcus Rashford, on his debut scoring twice and at Old Trafford, not only just in his first match for the Red Devils, but also at home. So that's an exciting one. I still love Marcus Rashford. I hope that he ends up being one of those players that stays at his club for 15 years because he's like a Manchester boy. So if he can just stick with us through this very tumultuous time, I hope that he will be rewarded for that, because I really think he's a great player, and I think that the team can continue to be shaped with and kind of around him. I don't know if he has the full prowess of a Wayne Rooney where you can build a team around him, but he can definitely be part of the attack that you kind of shape. So I would love to see him stick around because he did have a great debut. There are two that I will mention. One, both I watched in person, not at the stadium, but on television, and they are MLSers. I had mentioned, I don't love the MLS, but it is the American League here in the US, so I do feel like I'm obligated to talk about it because I am the American representing the Stars and Stripes. Zlatan Ibrahimovic coming and giving us his god-like view of himself. He actually did kind of play like a god in his debut. So he only played 20 or 30 minutes in his debut. I remember watching this. And Taylor Twellman was on the call, former U.S. men's national team player. He had this crazy goal where it was kicked out from the goal and it kind of pinged around a little bit, and then it ends up falling to Zlatan. And he saw that the keeper was off his line, so it bounces. He does this kind of scissor kick type of thing. It's like a half volley, across his body, rips it, and it's just right over top of the keeper and into the back of the net. And they ended up winning that game. It was in the El Tráfico as well, so it was against LAFC. FC, the other team in Los Angeles. They end up winning the Galaxy 4-3 off of Zlatan's goal with that. So that was an exciting one to like watch and to see it happen live. So that was kind of cool. The other one, the probably the GOAT of the MLS forever now since Messi is here. It was Messi's debut goal, his debut for the pink team in the MLS. That seems like everybody now wants to have this pink jersey. Messi scores a free kick. Absolutely nuts.
Crazy.
Everyone's watching, like in his debut, like just so much hype, and just rockets this one into the corner, like just no chance. It was 94th minute as well. Like you just can't write this. And then they end up with the win on that one. Just a crazy sequence to happen in the 94th minute. And it was 1-1 at the time of that. I was looking up to make sure that was true. And yeah, everyone just going nuts to win the game in the 94th minute with a free kick from the GOAT himself with all that hype. So much fun.
That's a really great shout. I remember watching that the next day, seeing the highlights, because obviously there was so hype. The hype around Messi was just crazy. And if you've seen the Beckham documentary as well, it is very much like he wants to bring Messi in. He gets Messi, and there's a reaction at the end where you can see him like celebrating. Can you imagine being the owner of that club and then bringing Messi along, and then having him score in that sort of fashion, a 94th minute free kick winner? I mean, it's an amazing performance, and it's just a shame that they haven't really performed throughout the season. There we go. But that is football. That is football for you. Speaking of Messi, speaking of obviously all the current hype around amazing, great players there at the moment, I think there's one player that we've kind of touched a bit on at the moment. We'll get into the specifics of the current Ballon d'Ors, which are happening right now. We've got some great some winners at the moment from that. We'll break those down in a second. But I just wanted to touch upon someone that we've kind of spoke about previously. It's two Englishmen in particular, actually, that had an amazing weekend of football. One in the La Liga, one in the Bundesliga. I'm just going to touch on first things first. I've said it before. I said at the top of the show, Jude Bellingham. I mean, insane. Just there's Erling Haaland, there's other players, but this is just a talent that you don't see. Like this level of performance, out of this world performance at the moment. So he just scored in what I had previously against Barcelona in the El Clasico. Can you imagine El Clasico? You've got Jude Bellingham. You're like it's the game as a Real Madrid player. It's the game you want to win, without a shadow of a doubt. And he scores first is a rocket, amazing. It's 1-1 now, and you're thinking surely they can take away a point here, but you've got to remember you've got Jude Bellingham in the team. And then what does he do? Cracking, I think it was 92nd minute winner. Amazing, just pounces on the ball to score that. Throw this to you. Is there a more on form player than Jude Bellingham right now in the world of football?
Like, not that I would know of. Like, it's just crazy how consistent he is scoring. It's just ridiculous to even have this. So, like, now the conversations are starting since Ballon d'Or is happening right now. Like, is he the next one in line? I would anticipate he's at least going to be giving Erling Haaland a run for his money, because now that we have Messi in the MLS, it's kind of like the transition. Of course, Ronaldo out in Saudi Arabia as well. So it's that transition of the next generation of all-star players. And it feels like it's really coming to a head with Bellingham playing super well. Erling Haaland should be winning the Ballon d'Or this year, even if he does not. I think like he's really at the top of his prime as well. And then Mbappe, really, I don't even know if he's in the conversation right now, being in PSG's team over in Ligue 1. Like, I don't even know if that's really a thing, because it's just not the same type of competition. You don't even get the same type of coverage as you do, even comparing Ligue 1 with La Liga. Like, it's just not really the same. And like, it seems like the competition is not the same too. So I feel like that puts a little caveat with him right now, but I do think he'll end up at Real Madrid or some other team. I still think it's going to be Real Madrid, but I don't really see what that team will not accomplish with Mbappe and Bellingham. But then I guess the question, do you even want Mbappe if you have Bellingham performing like this? Like, it's just so tough. Do you try to get the Galacticos version 3 together? I don't even know what's happening. He's too good. I had to ask you about the anteater type of thing with the celebration. like that with the arms
Yeah.
extended, because I didn't understand. All I knew is like he's just scoring goals and he does that celebration. It's just great. Is he eating ants too? I don't know. I'm hearing that you can eat like chocolate covered ants in some places I've had looked up, which I'd give it a try. Maybe we should ship him some. He's just super good.
He's incredible. And let me throw you some facts, right? You spoke about the Galacticos, right? So Jude Bellingham is the first player to score 13 goals in his first 13 games for Real Madrid since Cristiano Ronaldo in 2008. That is different. You've already surpassed. You're at a point now where you are transcending world football. You're at a different layer player right now. So Ronaldo in his first 13 games, he was 13 games, 13 goals, 2 assists. That was Ronaldo. And currently Jude Bellingham in his first 13 games, 13 goals, 13 games, 3 assists. I mean, it's different. And I was looking something more about like most valuable European talent. You mentioned obviously Erling Haaland and also you mentioned Mbappe. So number one at the moment, the most valuable European player on the planet at the moment. Who do you think it is? Most valuable player, European player at the moment is.
It's got to be Jude Bellingham, right? Other than
No.
Erling Haaland.
Bang on.
Okay.
So Erling Haaland, 180 million. Joint in that respect is who do you think?
In Europe, I think we're a little delayed in terms of market valuations, because I would say that Jude Bellingham's probably worth the same, if not maybe questionably more than Haaland. But I would probably say it's Mbappe, right?
Correct. So it runs Erling Haaland number one. Number two is Mbappe. Number 350 million euros at the moment valuation is Jude Bellingham. Then it is Saka, who Arsenal star boy Saka is 120 million, and he's 22 years old. Can you imagine that? So Jude Bellingham, 20 years old, 150 million. That's just crazy. And then you've got obviously Harry Kane, 110 million, and he's 30 years old. 110 million for a 30-year-old is incredible performances.
What an age gap between all those two. That's crazy.
So you got like just 23 years old Erling Haaland, 24 years old Mbappe, 20 years old. 20 years old. That's just frightening, actually. Jude Bellingham, 22 years old Saka, and then obviously you've got Harry Kane at the end as well, 30 years old. So, crazy stuff. Speaking of Harry Kane, how was his weekend? Did he enjoy himself? I think he enjoyed himself.
He had quite a good time, particularly with multiple goals, but the favorite seeming to be Rooney-esque. One of the goals that Rooney did score past the halfway line. So on his half, not even at halfway, on his own half, slamming the ball. I don't even know how you kick it that hard. Like, I was watching the highlight. If you've not watched it, you should go check it out. Like, I would not be able to kick the ball hard enough with that much accuracy to get it to where it needs to go into the back of the net, because like he hits it over the keeper. And I don't even think it bounces. I think it hits like the base of the net when it goes in. Like, that's just insane.
Perfection.
He's just scoring goals for fun, which is typical.
It's absolutely perfection. If you haven't seen it, honestly, check it out. In fact, check out the whole highlights of that game. So it was 8-0 they ended up winning. It's a bit of a weird start for Bayern Munich. They have a player sent off in the first 12 minutes. I think it's 12, 15 minutes. Then I think it's Darmstadt, I think it is. They're like a team within the Bundesliga. They then get a player sent off, and then they get another player sent off. So now it's 10 versus 9 men. It's a goal, 8-0, Harry Kane, as you mentioned, halfway line, hat trick, Leroy Sané flying. If you see some of the goals in that game, definitely check it out. Great performances. Now, speaking of amazing players, I'm going to break us down to where we're at the moment. So obviously at the moment, as we spoke about, we've touched upon it a little bit at the moment. We have the Ballon d'Or at the moment happening at the moment. So I'm just going to break down a couple of the current rankings that have come out at the moment. There's the actual Ballon d'Or winners yet to be crowned, but at the moment it's heading one way, and that one way is Lionel Messi at the moment. So I'll come on to whether you think that is. I'm already seeing a nod of the head. You're shaking your head, so I'm interested to break that down in a second. So let me just run through where the current sort of winners are at the moment. So we just spoke about Jude Bellingham. He has just been announced as the Coppa Trophy as the best talent in the world 2023. So props to him. Future Ballon d'Or winner, 100%. If he carries on in this way, and also if we manage to nick like a World Cup or a Euros along the way, he's guaranteed it. No two ways about it. He may even win the Real Madrid and the Champions League. So, I mean, I can see it happening. So that's the current lay of the land at the moment. We also have Vinicius Junior, which is the Brazilian, obviously, at the moment. We know the issues at the moment that were happening with racism within Spanish football. So he's currently won the Socrates Award for fighting against racism for his hard work in education in Brazil. He's also invested almost 4 million euros until now for his Vini Junior Institute, which is an education app for poor students. So a great cause, a worthy cause, and a very gracious winner for that as well. So shout out to Vinicius for that as well. Before I get into the other rankings at the moment, what are you thinking about this potential Messi announcement of Ballon d'Or?
I get why Messi is up for it, and he definitely should be with the year that he had previously. I think Erling Haaland had a better year, and let me give you the very specifics. We had another episode where we kind of broke down who makes the decisions on the Ballon d'Or, the different criteria. Let me give you just a real fast recap of how this goes down. I'm not a huge fan of the Ballon d'Or just because of this. So the people that determine who is on the list for Ballon d'Or, as well as the selection of the Ballon d'Or, it happens from France Football and L'Equipe journalists. So there's a bunch of journalists that make this decision. The Ballon d'Or ambassador, which is actually Didier Drogba. I did not know that, so that was kind of cool. And then 3 media members whose ballots matched up exactly with the final cumulative vote of the previous season, which I don't fully know what that means. So ultimately, all of it is just a bunch of journalists and media people, and then someone that the Ballon d'Or selects as their ambassador, which again is just Didier Drogba. So those are the people that select it. Then here is the criteria for the players, and this is the reason why I think that it is Erling Haaland and not Messi. The individual performance in the previous season, not the calendar year. So if you're looking at the season specifically, I think Erling Haaland had a better season overall. Statistically, that's true, than Messi did. So it just the records that he broke and the things that he did in his first season at Manchester City, I think by far means that he should have been selected as the Ballon d'Or winner. The other 2 criteria, so there are 3 pillars. The next one is team success during the previous season. We know how that turned out for Manchester City. Winning a treble, I mean, that's pretty hard to beat. Barcelona did not do that, and Messi wasn't even at Barcelona, so I don't know why I would have said Barcelona, even though I just envisioned Barcelona and Messi being one person. But his time at PSG, not as titillating, that fun word, definitely not as exciting. That is for sure. And then the last thing is player behavior and fair play during the season. I think they're probably about the same type of demeanor. I don't know the specific statistics on like who had more cards, Messi or Erling Haaland, but neither of them stick out in terms of having like harsh punishments or anything like that. So for me, like it's a clear winner. If I'm one of these random journalists or media people, I pick Erling Haaland for sure. Not to say that Messi is not a great player, but based on the criteria that Ballon d'Or people set, it should be Erling Haaland.
Fair. That all. I mean, I'm with you in my opinion, yeah, but the only thing that's really counting against Erling Haaland in the moment is he hasn't carried his club or his country, to a World Cup. And I think that's unfortunately where the journalists of kind of these areas that you mentioned, they've almost that's kind of overshadowed that a little bit. It almost feels
these journalists are stupid because if you're comparing Argentina to Norway, then you have a deeper problem and you should probably not be working in media for football.
Very fair point. Very fair point. Let's get into a bit more of these winners from today. At the moment, this evening, as we spoke about already, the Ballon d'Or is currently happening at the moment as we speak. We have the best goalkeeper in the world. Any ideas who that you think that is? Best goalkeeper in the world.
I actually don't know. So I'm purposely not like looking at this information because I kind of want to be surprised. The best goalkeeper in the world. It probably has to be a Premier League team, right? I would say it's probably not going to be Onana, sadly.
He's nowhere near it, I could tell you that.
Yeah, Jan Oblak, maybe. I feel like he's underrated and probably not considered one of the best. Courtois maybe should be up there.
So it might actually shock you. This will probably shock you a bit, but I'm going to throw it back in terms of, actually, if I give you a clue, so you'll probably get it immediately. But if I said to you World Cup,
I would not actually have the answer to that unless it's Emi Martinez. That's ridiculous. See, this all of these awards are just made up and they're stupid. He's definitely not the best goalkeeper in the world. He's a solid goalkeeper and maybe like in the top 6, but get away from me with this garbage. Oh my gosh. Courtois has been injured for like 3 months and I would still pick him ahead of him.
So the Yashin Trophy as the best goalkeeper in the world is gone to Emi Martinez. I felt like that was kind of coming, so I felt like World Cup. It's actually, I feel like this award is probably less on performance based, and I feel like it's more so on how he performed for his country and the heroics of the world, the penalty shootout. I think that's probably what it is. I think it's probably done on one game, maybe, which is outrageous, if we're honest with you.
But this is just dumb. So it's not even based on the criteria that the Ballon d'Or people have set for themselves. They're just saying, oh, he won the World Cup. He did really well there, which he did. Oh, we'll just give him that for the season. We'll just count that as the season, even though we're not even going to look at his actual season, which he did okay, but still not top level of the world. Best goalkeeper, get away from me.
So number two was Ederson. Number 3 was Bonu, who's was the Moroccan fella who did a great heroics for the World Cup. Number 4 was Courtois, so fair. And then number 5, Marc-Andre ter Stegen was number 5. And then the rest of I'll get into the top 10 actually in a second. I'll get in top 10. Number 7, I'll get into number 6 in a second. Number 7 was Livakovic, solid player. Croatian, I think it is. Croatian goalkeeper. Aaron Ramsdale, great to see, number 8. Mike Magnan, who's the, I think, Italian. He's one of the Italian goalkeepers. And then Bryce Samba, who I actually have not heard of. So Bryce Samba. Who do you think number 6 was?
I feel like if I'm actually thinking of how these media people are thinking of ranking it, it would be based on the World Cup and like what teams do internationally. So if it's last season, are we talking Onana?
That's correct.
I knew it. See, I could tell how they're thinking. This is just ridiculous.
So Onana was actually count 6 in the rankings here for the Yashin Trophy.
Okay, and to be fair, like I'm giving Onana a lot of crap, but he is a good goalkeeper and he has a lot of good stats. So I understand why he's on this list from previous season and how he's performed internationally. Like he is a good goalkeeper and he's just had a rough start to his life at Manchester United. So I understand why he's on the list.
And then before we get into the next section of this, we'll get into the Best Striker of the Year 2023. You know who this is. It's the one and only.
It's Erling Haaland. Should be Robert Lewandowski, though.
Yeah, bang on. It is Erling Haaland. He's, of course, there's no two ways about it. He was obviously gonna win that pretty comfortably. And then the 2023 Club of the Year. Who are you thinking?
Gotta be Man City, right? They won the treble.
100%. That was it. So, bang on for the second season in a row. It hurts, but they are in a different gravy at the moment. Different team. They deserve it. And we will be back there, but unfortunately, right now that is not going to be the case. And then it is brand new, fresh news just arrived. The Ballon d'Or winner of the year, 2009. 2010, 2011. It's happening. You know what's happening. 2012,
Garbage.
2015,
garbage.
2019, 2021, and announcing your Ballon d'Or winner for 2023, Lionel Messi.
It's a bunch of garbage. I understand why they selected Messi now that I've been able to fit in their shoes and the weird bias that they have for international storylines and performances. They should just call this the World Cup trophy. Like when there's a year that included the World Cup, that's obviously where all of their results are skewed. So you may as well just call this the World Cup Ballon d'Or the year after the World Cup, because obviously that's why he has won this award, because he won the World Cup, which is awesome. I love seeing him win the award. I wanted him to see him win the World Cup, not the Ballon d'Or. Obviously, that's awesome for him. The storyline is cool. It's great. But in the past season, he did not perform as well as Erling Haaland. I'm very frustrated, but I mean, hey, whatever. Congrats, Messi. This is probably the last one I think he would win.
I was going to say,
hopefully.
This
but you
is
never know.
probably the
Hey,
last one.
maybe he goes and wins like some other weird, the Copa America, the whatever happens now with that different type of structure. Hey, if he goes on a storyline and wins that, maybe they'll give it to him. Who freaking knows? This is all crap.
It's a very fair point. Would I argue that right now on this planet, the best player on the planet right of this moment is this Lionel Messi? Probably not, right? Because he's a great player. Yeah, he's a very talented, one of the best world, most talented player. But is there players perhaps better than him? Yes. But if you look at it as like an overall product, right, from last season, right? Yes, he didn't have as much of a impact to PSG, but World Cup is no mean feat. And his performances in that World Cup, if you're looking at the upper echelons of world football, right, a World Cup is for me, a marker. If you can perform at this stage of this level, I don't see there being any other bar, for example, of measurement, in my opinion. I'm with you, but I just feel like from a Messi's perspective, and also from the perspective of people who are journalists, for example, who are putting this together and then coming through with this, if you are looking at it purely based on as the top ranking of like all performances in terms of all cups you could potentially win, Lionel Messi winning that, I think kind of comes hand in hand. But also I would argue the impact he's had on world football. And I feel the journalists, like you said, are kind of giving it to him as like here you are, shut the door on the way out situation, potentially, because there is no greater player on the planet right now than Lionel Messi. As a Ronaldo fan, I feel like there is no better player in the world than Lionel Messi. If we look at it on paper, there is no better player.
I would say he is the GOAT for sure, and that's awesome. He should not have won this award based on the criteria that the Ballon d'Or people set for themselves. Comparing a World Cup like you just did, yes, World Cup, awesome, super hard to do if you can perform well. If your team wins, that's awesome. Totally support that thought and that process. However, if we compare to what Erling Haaland did his first year in a much more difficult league than where Messi plays, what his team did, which also needs to go into account apparently to what these journalists select from, Manchester City winning the treble, quite rare. Only two other teams have done that? And then on top of that, Erling Haaland's performance during that season where they won the treble and the records that he broke in the Premier League, I think all of that combined, based on, again, the criteria that this stupid board sets for themselves, outperforms the performance that Messi did at the World Cup. I think that's just how it breaks down, because I'm going specifically off the criteria that they had set. But you're right. It's just more of that fancy storyline. They just want to ship Messi off on a ship, throw flowers. Yeah. That's what it is about. So, I mean, this award...
I think it's just about giving him his flowers. That's what it is. And if you look at it like from a US perspective, David Beckham actually gave him the award, by the way, he actually gave the award, which is interesting.
That's cool.
What he's done for American football in terms of the number of people, thousands, tickets selling out, like Erling Haaland, I don't think he does that, right? Maybe because what he's accomplished perhaps this season is far better. But if you look at it as an overall product, Lionel Messi versus Haaland as an overall product, you've got to give it to Messi who win the World Cup. And also perhaps he's not had many bad performances. He's a consistent player. He scored goals. He scores goals, whatever club he is in. And he's kind of been a massive influence on world football and sport overall. I'm with you, though. I think that what they need to do is change the criteria and make it a bit more like who's the most popular player in the world? Well, Messi. Do you know what I mean? So
exactly.
We'll see next season. We'll see.
But the thing is, with this award now it's just a joke, because now they 100% are not going off of their own criteria, so it doesn't really matter. So it's like clearly not the best player in the world. I was already frustrated with this award in 2020 when they decided to not give out an award, even though football was played. Why would you just not give it out because the full season wasn't played. There were still seasons that ended up concluding just a little bit short. It should have been Robert Lewandowski. I was already like frustrated how they went about that process. So this like closes the door for me fully of saying this is just a goofy award and it doesn't really matter. It's clearly not the best player in the world. So don't pitch it that way. You need to either one, adjust your criteria, or two, call it something else and say like, yo, it's the most popular or the best storyline of the year or like the Lifetime Achievement Award or whatever. It's just dumb.
So moving on, because we've had a jam-packed episode. Moving on to the take it or leave it we've got here. So we'll just jump into that before we get into our nutmegged. So my take it or leave it was going to be Lil Messi is the rightful winner of the Ballon d'Or. But
well, I'm leaving that at the front door.
So what I was going to do is my take it or leave it for you is an interesting one, something that came up on the weekend, contentious topic always, maybe too big of a topic, but I want you to, we'll keep it nice and succinct from your side. VAR has ruined the beautiful game. It's my take it or leave it.
I'm going to leave that where I just left the take about Lionel Messi on the front porch because I think VAR has made it better. So
Interesting.
If you like understand, I'll make this really quick and I just see it. It's super easy for me. I am a person, if you understand the reasoning why I think that Messi should not have won the Ballon d'Or is because there are set criteria that are already in place of what the best player that wins the Ballon d'Or should be. There's like guidelines for that. Same with how the game should be played. There are clear set rules in the game that should be followed. If you're offside, you're clearly offside. Even if it's by like your hand, you're offside. Like that's the rule of the game. So if you can bring something in like VAR that helps clarify and get the actual right decision of the thing that's happening in the game, then I think that makes it better. So for me, I think VAR makes the sport better. It maybe like chunks it up a little bit, but I think I'm maybe more used to American sports too, where like American football as an example, like you run like 4 plays, then there's a commercial break for like 5 minutes, then you come back and you play again, which I think is stupid and annoying, but I think it's a little bit more broken up. So maybe I don't have as big of a problem with football being broken up in that way, but I just think it makes it better because it's more fair and usually the right decisions are made. Obviously, there's still human error, as we've seen lastly in the couple past games this season. But overall, I think VAR makes it better because it makes the right decision happen the majority of the time.
Fair. I think I would partially agree with you because I feel like what it's done now is people are now almost playing for VAR a little bit. They're almost like any goal, any opportunity, almost the players' mentality changes a bit. So we've got VAR, for example. More players they're running offside, onside. That's probably a big conversation that we need to get into one time for sure. So yeah, you're going to leave it. What you got for me?
Yes, I am definitely leaving that one, as you can tell how heated I got. So my take it or leave it for you involves our team, the Red Devils. Manchester United will miss out on Europa League action next year due to not placing in the top 6. Take it or leave it.
There's only one answer to this, and this off the back of the performances. However, I do need to take into account the other teams here. So before I give my answer, I've got to put into what other the contenders into this. So obviously you've got Arsenal, get top 4. Spurs, probably comfortably top 4 from the way they're performing. They may drop off a little bit, but I'll say Spurs do it. Man City, 100%. And then now it gets a bit murky here. And this is where potentially has Manchester United got a chance in this space. Now we're looking at it as a whole league, right, as in the rest of the league till next year. Do Man United pick it up? Probably not. Do Man United get close? Yeah, I would say they get close. I think that's because of Chelsea performances. Do I think they get the 4th? They don't make 4th, I'm going to say. So that's me taking it, is it? That's me taking it?
You are going to take it. So you're going to say they're at least playing in some Europa League action.
No. I don't think they get 4th, sorry. I think they get 5th.
So I'm not even, so I'm already assuming with my take it or leave it that they're not making the Champions League. So I'm saying Europa. So they're either going to be finishing 5th or 6th.
You're saying that they won't make Europa, sorry.
That's what I'm asking you. You think they're going to make Europa or not? They're sitting not in that place right now. So I'll break it down for you really quickly.
Okay, go for it.
Our Premier League table right now sits Tottenham, Arsenal, Manchester City, Liverpool in 1 through 4. Then we go to the 5th and 6th spot, Aston Villa, and then Newcastle. Then we go to 7th, Brighton. All these teams are like solid teams that have been performing well and have like a track record of continuing a decent show of form over the last couple of seasons. Then you have 8th, Manchester United, which is where we're sitting, 15 points. And then Brighton above us have 17. Then right below us, West Ham, Brentford, and Chelsea. Maybe 2 of those 3 teams like are fairly decent and could provide a threat. But like, where do you see us fitting in there? Do you think we're going to be making that 5th or 6th spot?
I misheard. I thought you meant Champions League because I don't think we hit Champions League next season.
Yeah,
you're going even lower, mate. You really ruled that out.
That's right. That's right.
So do we make Europa? Now you mentioned other teams. That's actually... I mean, also, you asked me this question on the back of that performance on the weekend as well. So I feel like it's unfortunately, because of potentially Newcastle and also Brighton in that space, I think they're the only 2 teams that are potentially could get Europa over us. I'd say, it hates me to say this, but I don't think we're making Europa. And that's because less so Man United performance. I think we do pick it up after Christmas. That's my opinion. And I think potentially with a couple of new transfers in new transfer window, I think we'll have a nice little run, and I think we'll get to that point. But I just think that Newcastle and Brighton will have too good of a run. They'll hit those 1-0s, 2-0s, for example, and they'll go forward. So, oh man, the way you put that in, that's really sad, near ending to the episode. So, yeah.
Yep. I'm going to also take this. I don't think that they're going to make it. I think the only way they do is if the transfer of Ratcliffe into ownership actually happens sooner rather than later, which it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And then like the process of all the documentation and then him getting ironed into it and starting to make decisions, I don't think it will happen fast enough to make a change. And that really is the key for me. Once ownership changes, then I think the culture will be able to change, and then the rest of the stuff will filter from there. Not going to happen in time. I don't think they're going to make it.
Wow, that is sad, but most likely true, unfortunately. We're closing out the episode, so you know what time it is. It's the end of the show. What I'll do is I'll drop my Nutmegged of the week for you, and then let me know yours. So mine is going to throw back to currently that unfortunate performance of Manchester United against Man City, where if you watch highlights of that, you just see Man United players missing. Honestly, we did not break that down because this would have just been this one episode about Man United's performances. Awful performance. Let's not get into it. But the Nutmeg of the week for me is ironically for the Man United fans. So they are obviously Erling Haaland. There we know a bit of the background potentially. He's Alfie Haaland's son who played for Leeds. There's like a famous game where Roy Keane, and there's a bit of a battle on the pitch. I think either Roy Keane lays into Alfie Haaland, and there's a bit of a kick-off within the pitch. And there's always there's an animosity there. Obviously, Leeds and Manchester United, we know the rivalry there as 2 clubs. So obviously, Manchester United fans, they're trying to play around with Haaland, which is probably the wrong idea and the wrong thing to do. And they're all kind of chanting Keano, Keano in relation to what's happened with his dad and Roy Keane on the pitch. Every time he's got the ball, they're chanting Keano, Keano, and there's a penalty. He scores, Haaland scores, and he celebrates a particular win. And he's got an interview afterwards, and he's talking a little bit about how he used those fuels, that Keano, to fuel essentially his performances to end up scoring. So well done, Man United fans. That was an amazing. You've just really poked the bear with that one there. So well done. So that is my nutmeg to the Man United fans. Well done, boys. What you got for us?
That's just lovely. Just typical Man United fashion. But my nutmeg of the week actually involves VAR, another VAR controversy, and they got it wrong, clearly. I think most people will agree with that one. So this is in the Wolves versus Newcastle game. So it's Wang Hee-chan. He fouls, technically, or so the call goes, which he ended up really not fouling because he didn't even touch him. Fabian Schär of Newcastle. So it's like right on the edge of the 18. If he would have actually fouled him where he fouled him, it would have been a penalty. Referee calls for a penalty, but then of course we have VAR, so we go to VAR, and then they look at it, and for some reason, they did not overturn the call, even though it is clear, the commentators see it as well, that he is going to go for the ball, but then realizes he's going to be too late. So he's like swinging with his foot to try to kick the ball, but sees that he's going to end up kicking Schär instead. So that he like kicks into the ground and like stops and does not even touch Shar at all. But then Shar goes over, and for some reason, VAR doesn't call it back. So pretty dumb. Quite another nutmeg from VAR, as they've been having a rough season. And we saw with the Liverpool thing as well. So VAR not looking too solid as of late, unfortunately. So nutmegging our people in the VAR studios.
Nice. We love a VAR nutmegged. I'm sure there'll be more and more VAR nutmegged as, unfortunately, as the game continues on. Fantastic. Wow, what a jam-packed episode. Lots of great debates. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it, Andrew, as well. It's been great as normal and as usual. We'll see you guys soon. Any final closing word for us, Andrew?
Yes. Congratulations to the Ballon d'Or Femminini, Aitana Bonmati. Yeah, it was expected. We knew that she was going to win it because she is clearly far and above with her Barcelona career and her Spain career. She was going to be the winner. But yes, shout out to her. Quality career and quality, well-deserved award for you, because this Ballon d'Or actually makes sense and went to the right person.
Love that. Lovely end of the episode. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you guys soon. Have a good day.
Peace.